You're listening to Freedom Frequency 1871. Now your hosts, Dutch and Tattoo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first ever test broadcast of Freedom Frequency 1871. This is Dutchsinse, of course.
And this is Tattoo. How y'all doing?
Welcome to the show. And it's just really good to get on the air, Tat. Finally, we're breaking free from the chains.
Chains of YouTube.
That's right. So we're breaking off onto radio, hoping to branch out and get the word out on the topics that we cover. Of course, those of you who know us know that we cover various topics relating to alternative news. Of course, myself, covering earthquakes, severe weather, weather modification, some conspiracy, mostly conspiracy fact, as I like to call it. And Tat, of course, he's our 1871 guy. He's our constitutional republic defender. And, of course, he's also the guy who protects the innocent and defends the free from pretty much everybody online these days.
I'm telling you, that's a job in itself. Trying to protect people. Trying to weed out the enemy, as you would say.
That's right.
Hopefully it's not all the enemy, but you know how that goes.
It's been a wild couple weeks, guys. You know, building up to the show, of course, trying to get the word out on FPRN. FPRN is a budding radio network, budding online, trying to build their subscriber base and their listenership. And we appreciate FPRN for giving us the opportunity to get on the air and talk about just pretty much everything that we cover online. Doing it live on the air, though, I think is a way that we can just get this out to the world and we can discuss the topics that we're putting out. You know, right now online, I mean, we're putting everything on Facebook and on Twitter, and we try to engage with text chat down below, but you know how that goes. It's, you know, I don't like to type, neither does Tat. And so we got big things going on, and that leads us into kind of what we can just start the show off with, which I think we'll do every week, is, you know, go over the headlines. You know, I'm breaking off here really quick. I know we're live. But so, you know, in the news this past week, we had El Salvador just blew up. They had a huge volcano that erupted there, evacuation of like 50,000 people, and that's in Central America. We had earthquake activity following that up all the way up the West Coast.
And breaking news, Ison is not going to kill us. And the debris that's coming in is not going to hurt us. Ain't that wonderful?
Isn't that neat?
That's just the best thing I ever heard.
It is. It's good news. Guess what, guys? Ison is not going to crumble into the planet. It's not going to cause any kind of crater. There's no impact that's going to occur. You know, this is what we have to do online, is we have to fish through the news headlines and find the truth, and that's why we call it alternative news information that's coming online, is we have to sift through the BS. Right?
There's
Tat,
plenty of that.
You know, can I get an amen on this, Tat, that we spend at least half our time going through all the stuff, just trying to figure out what's true and what's not?
Wow, really? Not an amen, but a wow, really.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And, you know, so, for instance, you know, I'm reporting on this volcano here. Well, there was a fake report of a explosion, a plume, that happened in Japan this past, let's say, 2 to 3 days now. People have been reporting that a large plume has erupted from Fukushima nuclear power plant, and we only have 3 to 5 days till it reaches the United States. That's the report, right?
Right. And the pictures, happened on and back when the actual earthquake occurred?
Yeah.
Right after the earthquake and the typhoon come in, the photo was that old? I mean, really, come on now.
Yeah. A 3-year-old picture that got put out yesterday or 2 days ago, and then people saying you need to be off the West Coast in 3 to 5 days. Now, none of it's true, guys. There's a little bit of steam that happens when the rain hits the new casket that's being built around Fukushima. And the steam is not, I mean, it is something you might not want to be directly up on if you're there, but it's not going to be coming across the ocean to cause problems for us on the West Coast. And so we're like, being these independent researchers, we're a self-policing community. And we go through this time and time again with the news. It's happened. What is this? The third Fukushima fire story that's come out in the last 2 years that was false. Just completely made up. One time there was a grass fire, I think.
100% fake.
Yeah. And so,
over and over again.
That's why we're breaking onto the radio. We can discuss what's real in the news on Fridays, and you guys can have something to consider over the weekend. So, I would ask you to take into consideration the news that we're talking about every day for the rest of the week, and to look into the things that we're going to present. A lot of the links we're going to give you will be provided on the FPRN website, which I encourage you guys to go to anyways, because there's a bunch of other radio shows that are worth listening to, including the radio show coming after ours. And let me give them a shout out. Tat, you ready?
Yep.
I want to shout out to Monty and to Agent
Monty,
Smith and Chrissy.
Agent Pro.
Yeah. And of course, people behind the scenes at FPRN for taking care of everything. It's, we wouldn't be able to do this without you guys, and thank you. So
that's right. Thumbs up, guys.
Yep. So, earthquake-wise, let me get back to the news here. Earthquake-wise, we have a little bit of an action going on along the southwest portion of the North American plate, which is right where California meets Mexico. And that activity is also going down through Central America, and the volcanoes are beginning to erupt in Central America. And I would urge you guys all to have an earthquake plan and be prepared just in case. No panic, just in case. It's always good to have that plan ready. Tat.
What's up?
Did you hear about the explosion that just happened in North Dakota?
Yeah, with the train? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Or is that another? Or are you talking about something that I don't know about? But I did hear about the one with the train.
It just happened. This is somewhat breaking news, guys. There's a large explosion just occurred in North Dakota. A train filled with petroleum products and other chemicals derailed, and the cars collided, leaked, and exploded into a giant mushroom cloud. And that video will also be linked up on FPRN. You guys got to check that out. It's just, when you see it, it's just a huge explosion. And what's going on up in North Dakota, in case you guys don't know, it's the new oil and fracking central for the United States. They're spending billions of dollars to extract natural gas up there through the fracking process. They've even had some earthquakes in North Dakota, a non-earthquake prone area, at the fracking operations. And so they're just getting all this stuff pumped out of there. And we're going to start seeing more of these, guaranteed, in the next few months to years, for sure, coming out of North Dakota, because they're moving so much stuff out. And they're going to export that to the world, according to Obama.
Yeah. Who? Obama?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to invoke the name. You guys will get used to this on the air, is that if I invoke the name of Obama, at some point or another, we're going to have the red pill, blue pill sample from Obama telling everybody to take the blue pill because it's half the price of the red pill.
Exactly.
So, this dovetails nicely into what we're talking about here, the fake news versus the real news. It's a red pill, blue pill moment, just like in the movie The Matrix. So you've got a choice. You can take the blue pill. It's half the price. It's convenient. It's easy to live your life by. You'll never have any problems. You can go right back into the Matrix.
Or you can listen to him say the oldest constitutional democracy, too. I mean, we are a republic, are we not? But oldest constitutional democracy? Okay. We can go with that if he wants to. But I don't think the people want to go with that. That is if they know what's good for them.
No. And that's where 1871 comes in on Freedom Frequency 1871, guys. This is what the whole fight's about. And I hate to get real serious all of a sudden, but this is really something that is near and dear to my heart and to Tattoo's. And it's the Act of 1871 is the source of all our problems. And we're going to have to go into the next segment here in a few minutes, but just let me just lead this off with saying that our country is a corporation. It became incorporated, just like a corporation would, just like McDonald's or UPS. Here in St. Louis, just recently, they celebrated the 200th anniversary of incorporation. And they literally filed corporate paperwork to form the town of St. Louis. They filed corporate paperwork to form our country. When they did that, it made each and every one of us citizens into corporate workers for the corporation.
Straw man.
Right. A straw man, just like a shirt that you would see working at any store, at Target or whatever, with their red shirt on. They made us all red shirts, okay? And the country that we were taught exists does not exist in actuality today because certain things were done going back through the Civil War. Now that we're going to have to spend a whole segment on this. Several segments, several shows are going to be spent on this, people, talking about how we got into this mess of our country becoming a for-profit corporation. Now, you think it would be nonprofit. It should operate like a nonprofit. I mean, they should have to raise the money beforehand before they want to do something. If they want to build an aircraft carrier, they'd have to, like a charity, they'd have to do a fundraiser to raise the money that they need beforehand to build something. But no, they're just like a Daddy Warbucks corporation. They wave their finger and say, build it, and send me the bill. And that's how we get into the mess that we're in. The corporation is out of control.
They use the Federal Reserve to just print the money to pay the people with.
Well said. They just print the money. We all know this. Money is printed. It's not backed by gold anymore. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. Now, that credit is based upon you and I. Now, people don't understand this, but they borrow money. The Federal Reserve and the stock market, too, they actually trade on us. But the Federal Reserve borrows money based upon what you and I and everyone else in the country will produce over the course of our lifetimes. And they compute that out. And they're able to borrow against each and every one of us. The way they do that is they set up a corporate account for you. Guess what your corporate account is, guys? You can see where I'm leading with this. It's your Social Security account. And it's all tied together into this big backdoor deal where you are the buck, the dollar sign, and you're constantly generating money for the corporation. Now,
and Google is taking Google and YouTube and all the rest of them and taking that and using all your information and making that your internet ID as your Social Security card as well.
Right. It all has to do with association. This goes back to ancient England. Now, this is like a lesson in law. I'm not a law professional, but I've learned a lot in reading in the last 4 years of talking to Tattooed and what we've researched. But in ancient English law, there's a concept called suretyship, S-U-R-E-T-Y ship. And suretyship is where you sign for something that's not yours. And it goes back to traveling to the Middle East in the Dark Ages. Through suretyship, you would send goods. Let's say you send a whole thing of grain with a guy. Of course, the landowner's not going to go. He's the rich guy. He's sitting in the plantation. So he sends his boy. And his guy goes down there with a writ. And through suretyship, he signs for it, gets the signature, brings back the payment to the landowner. Now, that's called signing for somebody else's stuff. But through suretyship, you assume responsibility for all of this. So they get you to sign your Social Security card as a child, right? You know, everybody gets a Social Security card. For one of the first things you're going to sign is going to be your Social Security card. In the mail, they mail you things from the government. And it's always addressed to you in capital letters with your last name, usually your last name first, then your first name, then your middle name. In a court docket, it's the same way. That's because they list your name.
Always in capital letters. Everything that comes to your house in the mail itself, it's a personal letter.
That's right.
From personal letter. And we got a minute and a half before break, Dutch.
Oh, this is how it goes, guys. I get really into this. And once people understand how simple it is, like how simple it all boils down to, that the root of all this, whether it's weather modification, whether it's military spending out of control, military-industrial complex, Obamacare, it all goes down to one thing, and that's the corporation. If you could nix the corporation, all the employees get fired, first of all, and a restructure occurs where it becomes a nonprofit, where they have to raise the money beforehand to operate. That's where we're going with this. We're trying to find solutions for what the problem is, and that's the goal of this radio show. I think ultimately, one of the things I think Tat and I have pre-discussed about this is that there needs to be solutions presented to the problem, and the problem is the Act of 1871. It goes back even further than that. However, there's hope because it can be understood. This isn't some Chinese legalese that we're going to be going over, folks. This is something that you can all understand. It's something we deal with every day, companies, paying people, paying things, employing people.
And we'll be right back, guys. With Freedom Radio Frequency, we got to take a short break.
Hi, I'm Trevor Moore. Due to the recent revelations that in order to fight terrorism, the NSA has been using a secret court order to spy on every single Verizon and AT&T customer, Americans have become outraged and concerned about their rights to privacy. But along with that concern comes a feeling of hopelessness. I mean, what can we do? Vote in new leaders? Well, the problem is that during an election, each candidate pretends to not be an asshole. Then when they get the job, they reveal that they've actually been a complete asshole this entire time. No, elections are of no use. The only way to fight back against our country's excessive wiretapping and data mining is to make it irrelevant. That's why we're launching Operation Everyone Talk Like a Terrorist all the time. If we all openly discuss terrorist plots in each of our phone conversations, then eavesdropping on those phone conversations becomes pointless. It's simple. We just need to work it into our daily vernacular. For example, instead of saying, "I love you," you could describe a terror attack. The larger the scale, the more you love the person.
Hi, Mom. I just got out of school. Can you pick me up?
I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm gonna use a truck bomb to blow up the Brooklyn Bridge.
I'm yelling anthrax to Pierce to Morgan.
Or nonsense about God's will being great could mean affirmative.
Hey, man, they have a 7:30 show, and do you think you can make it in time? God is merciful and his love is unchanging. Did you already get me a ticket?
And those are just a few examples. You can make up your own. Have fun with it. But it's time for us to stand up and protect our rights. Because those assholes aren't going to.
Do you have a group or organization founded on the principles of personal liberty, health freedom, or accountable government? We invite you to check out Same Side Entertainment. Get connected with leaders in the liberty movement like Tom Woods, Kevin Gutzman, Jack Hunter, Robert Scott Bell, Michael Scheuer, and many more. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our website at www.samesideentertainment.com. Again, that's www.samesideentertainment.com. Same Side Entertainment, connecting you with the education and resources you need.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction, been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons, been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian, but shouting at leaders who claim to be listening, and the pendulum swings from the left to the right.
All right, folks. Guys, okay. Welcome back. We are going to go into the next segment here. But, before we even go any further, I want to point you guys all to tattooed1009.com. And let me spell that for you real slow so you guys can type it in while you're here. TATOOTT1009.com. And there you're going to see 3-4 hard years worth of work done by Tattooed on the air with me now, assembling the information that we're discussing now, it could take a legal scholar months or years to go over the information we're going to be talking about over the next several months and years. But I would urge you all to look into everything that we're saying. Don't just take my word for it or Tats, but to really look into it, to learn it, so that when you're talking to your family and your friends, when you're talking to a stranger and you hear somebody say something that's foolish, like Obama saying that we are a democracy, you can correct that and say, we are not a democracy. We are a representative republic that was usurped during the Civil War. See, most people don't know how the Civil War was won. Okay? Now, I'm not taking sides here on the Civil War, okay? That gets really touchy, right? But the way the North won was to borrow the money they needed to win. In order to borrow the money they needed to win, they had to borrow it from someone, of course, and they borrowed it from international bankers, of course. Unfortunately, the bankers had a stipulation. In order to receive that bailout, the first ever real bailout during the Civil War, they had to create a corporate entity to receive that. They're not just going to turn that over to the government of the United States. They had to turn it over from a private corporation in Europe, which, again, this information can all be sourced out, to the United States as a corporation. So the United States had to create its own corporate entity in order to even get that money. And the North did that. They sold out, quote unquote, literally.
And it became the District of Columbia.
That's right.
The Organic Act of 1871. That's what created the Federal Reserve and took all of us and turned us into corporate slaves. And that's the truth. And it's so hard for me on YouTube to get that message out. And I hope and pray that through the radio show and the help with the friends that FPRN radio is doing for us, we can reach hundreds and thousands of people and can be awakened to this a needed thing for us to wake up to. And it's very important for everyone to hear this. And all lawyers, military, police, everyone that's ever took the oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Today is the time for you to reach down into your heart and say, I'm doing this for my children, my kids, my family, my loved ones. So we can be free and sovereign people the way we were supposed to be by the Constitution in the original way it was written.
Freedom.
That's right, freedom.
That's the point of the show, guys, is to express our freedom. We've ran into a brick wall on YouTube, quite frankly, and other places, where we were not able to appropriately express our freedom. Our free opinion to express ourselves was silenced or attempted to be silenced multiple times. We won't go there on the radio show, but other than to say that we've tried really hard to bring the information to you in a format that was easy to read or understand, and that wasn't really well received because of the research that's involved, the understanding that needs to be relayed person to person.
And the censorship.
That's right. Facebook censorship, YouTube censorship, Twitter censorship, blocking of feeds, no share button appearing next to your post, 100 thumbs down instantly as soon as you post your video. I mean, we're talking craziness, guys. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We could talk about the channel shutdowns. We could talk about the threats. This stuff's real. and people take this stuff seriously, okay, we're talking about our freedom for real. Because if you can overthrow the corporate government and get it replaced immediately, instead of just, everybody talks about this revolution no, it needs to be a restructuring of the corporate government into a nonprofit. Could you imagine if they had to raise the money beforehand from us to do anything? Everybody, wouldn't give to certain things. If they had to operate like a charity. But I digress, because first we have to explain that between the war in the North and the South printed its own money. We get back to the money again. The North borrowed it. The South printed their own. You can still go to these auction houses and see the colonial scrip is what they called it. And not colonial scrip. Confederate scrip.
Yes.
And Confederate scrip was based upon the original colonial scrip. Now, colonial scrip goes back to the founding of our country, guys. When we rebelled from England, there was no money. The British bankers cut them off. And of all people, Benjamin Franklin stands up and says, why don't we print our own money? And they did. And they called it colonial scrip. And they only printed a certain amount. Now, the way they got it to work was they said you could pay your taxes with it. And if you like that preview of Freedom Frequency 1871, guys, go ahead and tune in every Friday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time on FPRNradio.com. And that begins January 3rd, 2014.
Be there. Don't be square.
Yeah.